hop on here, but we're excited to, get into some nutrition for busy mom runners. And we've got an exciting guest here. I got Kayla Fitzgerald, who's not only a busy running mom herself, but she's also a registered dietitian and the owner of Endurance Nutrition. And I think you're coming off a pretty big race yourself. Is that
Yeah, I did a 24-hour race
very
on
cool?
Saturday. So that was super, super fun. That's the longest duration I've ever ran, and it ended up being the farthest distance I've
Oh,
ever ran. So that's really cool.
congrats. That's awesome. As someone who can't fathom being up past 10, I'm like, my mind is blown. So,
I'm the same way. Like, we went trick-or-treating last night, and I made sleepy time tea and put it in a mug.
like,
and
I'm
took it
done.
with me. I was like, I'm ready for bed. Like, used to take beer, and now now I'm ready for my
How
pajamas. So,
things have changed.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a cold Halloween here. So I think too, the beer keeps your hands a little
Right.
cold. So if you had a beer, you needed some
Yeah,
mittens.
the
So
tea was a good
yeah,
idea.
that's a good choice. It's a good choice. Well, yeah, well, hopefully you're feeling well, but it sounds like some people are hopping on here. So thought it might be fun to have you just kind of start out with sharing a little bit about how you got into running and kind of how that grew into endurance nutrition.
Yeah, so I actually hated running growing up. I did track and field in high school. I threw the javelin just randomly. I was like, that sounds fun. And I actually this is terrible, but sorry, my coach, if you're listening anywhere, I'd sit in my car while they ran the practice, like the warm-up laps, because I'm like, I have to run like 20 feet. I don't need to run. So I hated it. I avoided it like the plague. And it honestly wasn't until I became a mom that I picked up running. My husband works in food and beverage. He's a chef, so he has
Oh,
a
cool.
crazy schedule. At the time when our kids were like when I was pregnant and when they were little babies, I was actually going back to school to get my degree in
Okay.
nutrition. And so I was like, I need something.
Yeah,
Like
that's we're hustling.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was like, I need some time for me. And I really loved the idea of doing some sort of working out. I've always been, pretty active, but I was like, how am I going to make this work? Like, how am I going to go to the gym while he's at work? And then I have these kids and like, what am I going to do? So I was like, okay, well, you can wake up super early and you can just go like run in your neighborhood. I think it was almost like a 1 mile perfect loop in my neighborhood. And so I just kind of put on some probably terrible shoes and got started. I always tell people, I'm like, it took me, no lie, like 3 months to run a mile without stopping.
Yeah.
And I didn't
That's so cool to
realize,
hear, though.
yeah,
I mean, that's where we all start. Yeah.
yeah, it's so mental, right? Like you have
Yeah.
the physical ability to run a mile. Like most
Yeah.
people could probably do it, right? Like without any training or whatever, but I don't know. I remember just one morning being like, what is going to happen if you don't stop, right? Like, you're likely not going to have a heart attack. You're likely not, your legs aren't going to break or fall off. Like, you're going to be just fine. And yeah, that's when I really realized, like, yes, you have to train physically, but that mental part, that's a big part of it. So yeah, it really wasn't until I became a mom when I was like, wow, like my life has changed a lot and I need something that's just for me.
Yeah.
And that's where running came in.
Well, I think so many people can relate to that. I think a lot of people especially moms, do find it kind of looking for something that's just
Yeah.
theirs, and running's kind of accessible.
Yeah. And nobody
cool.
else wants it in the family, right? They're like, ooh, no, go.
You do it. That's cool. Yeah, that's awesome. It's cool to hear that start, though, because I think, so often we get intimidated by seeing where people are now.
Yeah.
So it's so refreshing to hear, like, okay, this gal who just ran 24 hours started with a mile loop in her neighborhood
and
too.
struggled really hard.
Yeah, it's hard.
And that was only, I don't know, like 8 to 10 years ago. So it's not like I've been, which is a long time, but like, it's not like I've been doing it since I was little or even like a super young adult.
Yeah, it's not that you started as this phenom track star who was running. Yeah, so I think that's so cool to hear, because I think that's where so many of us start from. So it's fun to hear, like, yeah, that is where we start. That's how it goes. So that's awesome. So how'd that lead into kind of getting more into the nutrition side of things? Like, what were your hangups there? I mean, that's
Yeah. So like I said, I was in school, like whenever I picked it up to become a dietitian. And so I started out kind of on the clinical side of things. I started working in the hospital, and I loved that. But again, with my husband's job, it was just kind of like, oh my God, I'm in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's like,
Okay.
if there's a hurricane, like you're sleeping in the
Yeah.
hospital and he is working at this resort and he's got stuff to do. And I'm like, this is too much. Like,
Yeah.
with little kids, just being in that clinical setting.
Yeah.
And so a friend had reached out and she was looking for a part-time dietitian to join her private practice. And I was like, yeah, I'll pass it along, like, to the Dietetic Association, whatever. And I got off the phone. I'm like, whoa, that could be me, right? Like,
Maybe
I
me.
can do that.
Pass it to me.
Yeah, right. So I called her back. I'm like, still like post this, interview people, look for people, but super interested. But it was a scary jump, right? I was going from a steady job with a paycheck with really great insurance to like you get paid if you get clients and no insurance. So it was a scary move, but so glad we did it. So I did that for a couple years. And then going on almost 2 years ago, I really kind of niched down to like what I was really passionate about. And I was like, I love running. I love being active. And those are the kind of people that I love to work with too.
Yeah.
Like helping you fuel for your adventure, not how can I make my body smaller. Like that, I've been there. I've done that personally and as a dietitian, and I don't love it. It's not fun for me, and it's usually never fun for them either. Like, looking at it from this, like, how can we fuel perspective and just instead of just how little can I eat and how small can I get. And so I kind of like meshed the world of intuitive eating and sports nutrition, and that's where endurance nutrition was born. And I just, like I said, I just saw this need of like, we need to stop focusing on, the number on the scale and start focusing on let's feel good, right? Like exercise feels good when you're eating enough.
Let's actually see what your body can do and get after it. Yeah.
I had a client yesterday. We do like these monthly Q&A sessions in my membership, and she was like, this isn't a question, but I just had to tell you. She's like, I'm training for this marathon, and she just did a 20-mile run, and she was like, I felt so much better during and after that 20-mile run than I used to feel when I would do just like a 5-mile run before I started actually fueling my body. And it's crazy to see the difference that even just like, I've had tons of runners, be like, oh, I just started eating before my workout, and it felt like I'm so much faster now. It feels so much better. I don't feel like I'm going to die after, and it's these little things that just make such a big difference. So that's kind of how it was born. And, another scary move, right?
Yeah, the scary moves. They're usually the
Maybe
fun
seeing a pattern here.
Yes. Well, and that's too, I think, especially moms who are busy running. I mean, it's not like you can just finish your run and go veg on the couch for, 8 hours. You've got to kind of jump right back into things. Yes, it would be nice sometimes. Yes. But yeah, being ready to kind of jump back into things with the kiddos and work and all the other things that don't go away just because you chose to go out on a run. So yeah, I mean, what are some basics, that you could maybe give some moms out there who are like, I'm busy. Who kind of are wondering, is my nutrition a problem? I think it is. I notice, maybe I have intentions to eat, but life gets busy. I'm not necessarily under fueling on purpose, but I know that, my kids stole my granola bar, I made my bagel and then someone swiped it. I mean, those are all very real.
In there. And I love that you said like you're not under fueling on purpose. Maybe like that's something I see a lot of, and we can maybe touch on that a little bit too. But some things that as a busy mom who is also a runner that I do, and let me just be the first to say I don't love doing a lot of these things. Like the first one is I plan out my meals every week. I hate meal planning. I know I'm a dietitian. Everyone thinks I probably love it, but I don't. I'm a person too. Like
I would prefer the food appeared magically.
Yes, it would be great if it could just magically appear, right? But like my husband's a chef, right? I'm talking about food all day. So sometimes like food is like the last thing that anyone wants to think about in our house. But when I plan it out, like, right, maybe I'm going to spend 10, maybe 15 minutes if I really can't think of things, planning this out for the week. And maybe that feels like a pain in the butt. However, like Tuesday at 5 p.m., Kayla is going to be so glad
she did it.
Sunday, Kayla took 10 or 15 minutes and wrote this stuff down. And it was like, hey, here's the plan. And then I'll order groceries as I'm doing that, and I'll pick them up either like Sunday or Monday. And those are just like the days that work for me. Yeah. You can obviously do whatever, but that's my system. And so I know what we're eating, and I know that I have the ingredients to put it together. If you are busy, we just finished soccer season, thank God. But during soccer season, I have 2 kids. And so it was literally Monday through Thursday, like every single night we were at the soccer field. And so during those crazy times, and maybe that's like all year for you, right? Like maybe your kids are always in stuff. You've got to factor that in, right? So like, are you eating at 3 p.m.? Are you eating at 8 p.m.? Are you going to like take something to the soccer field? So I always look at my schedule too. I don't just write like, we're going to eat whatever. I look and make sure that that matches up with what we're going to have that night. And so having realistic expectations too, right? Like, so for the last couple of weeks, there was a lot of like basically Lunchable style dinners at the soccer field, or grilled cheese and soup for dinner, or it was like a casserole that I made ahead of time and we warmed it up. So like making sure that what you're actually planning actually fits the schedule. Because if you're like, hey, I'm going to make this meal that takes an hour to make, but you're not getting back from soccer practice till 7:30 at night, I doubt everyone wants to eat at 9 p.m. right? So
angry people in your house.
And I'm the hangriest of all the people in my house. So like,
I
it's never going to work for me.
Yeah.
So having a plan, making sure the plan meshes with your schedule. And then this is a big one. Do not feel bad if you need to hit up the Chick-fil-A drive-thru or whatever, or like get a rotisserie chicken. Like we have the grocery store that's by us is, it's called Publix, and it has like really awesome rotisserie chicken and like the little potato wedge sides and all that stuff. Like, don't be afraid to lean on those convenience meals. Costco has some really great take and bake stuff, freezer items. Like, it doesn't always have to be made from scratch, perfect nutrition. Like, yes, that's great, but that's also not realistic. So like, it's okay if you threw the frozen pizza in the oven. It's okay if you went through the drive-through. Like, the priority is feeding the people in your house, feeding yourself, right? And I like to have like really easy, convenient, like healthier stuff on hand to kind of mix with that, right? Like if I'm going to have a frozen pizza, cool, like let's get some baby carrots out to munch on like while that's cooking, right? Like stuff that doesn't require a whole lot of effort, that's already prepped, ready to go. And we're just making sure that we're feeding everybody. You kind of mentioned about like the snack, or like, someone stole your granola bar or whatever. I will sometimes put stuff way up on the top shelf. I know they can't reach it.
And your kids were probably a little bigger than mine. They're probably better at feeling your snacks.
Oh yeah. And I have like a running cupboard that's all like Sour Patch Kids and Nerds and like whatever. And they found that. They call it the candy cupboard, mom's candy cupboard.
They might want to start running if they know that that's
yeah, it's pretty funny. But yeah, like, plan it out, make sure it's realistic, and don't feel bad about doing convenient stuff. Those are my biggest pieces of advice, to just make it work when you're busy.
And I love that, the setting realistic expectations, taking that little bit of, even if it's 10-15 minutes, like you said, on Sunday night, to get that plan. So you're not scrambling at 4:30 to figure out what are we doing. We're all hungry, but we're, empty-handed.
No good choices are going to happen when you're hungry and it's dinner time,
But letting go of any shame with, okay, yep, I didn't, I fed my kids frozen pizza tonight.
Yeah.
Who cares?
That's fine. They loved it. I love it. Right?
It's awesome.
Yeah.
So what are some, if you've got somebody listening and what are some signs they could look for to maybe, look into their nutrition?
Yeah. And I love that. Kind of goes back to like how you said, you're not always intentionally underfueling. So it's not always super obvious. I think the big one that a lot of people tend to wait for is like, oh, well, I lost weight, so, okay, I must be underfueling. A lot of times that is not a thing. Like, you can stay the same weight and still completely under fuel. So things that I look for are typically like big changes in your appetite, like whether it's you're a lot hungrier or you're a lot less hungry. Any kind of deviation in appetite sometimes might mean that something's a little bit off. Sleep, if your sleep is disrupted, you're having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, that sort of thing. Obviously feeling really tired throughout the day whenever maybe you normally don't feel that way. For women, any disruptions in your cycle. So if you're like a pretty regular person and all of a sudden now it's like your cycle is shorter or longer, or it's coming every other month, that's usually a pretty big sign that there's some underfueling or something going on. I will say too, like especially women in like late 30s through 50s, that could also be the start of perimenopause. So, you know, take it with a grain of salt, but any changes with that, performance out on your runs, right? If you're just like, oh my God, my times are plummeting, or things that used to feel really easy, you now feel really tough, that's usually a pretty big warning sign that you're not eating enough. So those are some of the big ones I look for.
Yeah, and what would be kind of some first steps that you would have somebody take if they are kind of like, oh, that's me, that's me, that's me. You know, are there a couple things they could try on their own first, or would you recommending seeking out someone like you right away?
Yes, so, I mean, it depends on the situation. You know, if it's somebody that, and it's kind of tough to give like a general answer, but if it's somebody who doesn't have, you know, maybe a history of disordered eating, and it really is just like truly, I don't know how to eat as an athlete, right? I don't love people like tracking their intake and whatever forever, but it can be helpful in the short term just to see like, oh my God, I'm only eating 1,000 calories a day, right?
Yeah.
But with that, you also have to have a general idea of where you should be eating. And the internet is not always like the greatest place.
Especially for active women. It's a lot of caveats there. So.
Yeah, a lot of those little calculators like don't factor in that, hey, you're being active, or they are for people trying to lose weight, especially the apps like MyFitnessPal. Like that's all about trying to lose weight. Yeah. It's not going to tell you like you should eat more because you're super active. And so some short-term tracking can be helpful, but again, it's really helpful if you kind of know what targets you're even trying to hit. Other things that you could do is, seek out help, right? Try eating a little bit more and see if you feel better, right? Like, if you're not eating something before your workout, eat something before your workout. If you don't normally do snacks, throw in, you know, an afternoon and an evening snack or something like that. So just try eating a little bit more. And if those things don't work, then reach out. I mean, not just me, but there's plenty of dietitians out there that work with runners. And we all have, you know, different services and different levels of, you know, support and that sort of thing. That was a big thing when I started my business, was I didn't just want to do one-on-one nutrition coaching because it's a big financial commitment. So I have a lot of different ways that people can kind of hop into my world and work with me, because I want it to be accessible. Like that person I told you about that ran the 20 miles. Yeah. She's in like the lowest price thing that I offer. It's my monthly membership that's like $29. And so it's not like she's spending, you know, $500 a month with me or anything. She plugged in at the lowest level of anything that I do, and she's crushing it. So it doesn't always have to be like this insane investment, you know? So.
Well, and how great, like from a time standpoint and knowing you're getting good information to, you know, just kind of pony over that, you know, that $30 a month and know the information you're finding is relevant to you, actual information. You don't have to Google search for,
right?
I mean,
that's the biggest thing. I'm always like, anything that you would Google, because we do those monthly Q&A sessions. I'm like, anything that you would Google, put that in, you know, the form for the session, and I'll answer that. Don't waste your time Googling it. Or follow people on Instagram that you know have credentials and that you know are using evidence-based research, which should be all dietitians. I'm not going to say they're all doing the right thing, but, you know, registered dietitians have a legal credential. Like, we went to school, we have a degree, we then had to take a test, and then we also have to get recertified every couple years and make sure that we have enough continuing education units. Somebody that's, and again, I'm not saying a health coach or a nutrition coach or any of that is bad. There's some amazing ones out there, but those are certifications you can also get like over the weekend,
Yeah.
you know? So making sure that you're getting your information from credible sources. Anybody out here can have a platform and say whatever they want.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use it to say things that sound like really sexy and exciting, but they're doing a lot of harm, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times when I post something, I'm like, this is probably going to make some people mad, or this is not anything anyone wants to hear, but it's the truth. And so I'm putting it out there because people need to know the truth.
Well, and you put a ton of great content out there for free on Instagram, and it does sound like you've got a ton of ways that people can, you know, interact with you. You know, as we're kind of wrapping up, gosh, I think we could talk for much longer on this.
I know.
But is there a way people, like, what's the best way to connect with you, I guess? Should they head over to Instagram, or how do you like to make that connection?
Yeah, Instagram's great. You know, it's me running the show over here. So I always love like getting your messages, reach out, tell me what you need. And, you know, I'm happy to say, hey, here's a couple options that are going to be a great fit for you. Because everybody's a little bit different, you know, so there's not like a one best for everybody. I will say I love group coaching a lot. That's just really fun. As a runner, right? It's like a group of people that only want to talk about running. So
another good reason to is they do want to talk all those details.
Takes the pressure off like the husband who maybe doesn't want to hear me talk about running in circles for 24 hours. You know, I'm like, I can go here and talk to my
how long was your loop? How long was the loop?
It was like 1.65 or something like that. So it was a short loop over and over.
So that's that mental strength, man. I mean, holy moly, going out around that thing, you know, 60 plus times. I mean,
luckily it was really pretty. So that helped. I will say the biggest mental thing in the beginning was seeing everybody pass me a bunch, right? Because there were 6-hour people, there were 12-hour people, and even some 24-hour people. I'm sure were passing me, but I'm like, so I don't. And that part was tough. I'm used to running ultras here in Charleston and being like in the swamp alone for like the whole day. So having that many people around at first was a little bit like overwhelming, but then it became fun. And then having like my little aid station every loop was very tempting. Like to just be like, I could hang out here for a while, you know? So that was an interesting part, but it was a lot of fun. I had a great time and I feel good this week. I'm taking the entire week off of running and like any sort of strenuous exercise. I feel great, but I've also done this long enough to know that just because you feel good doesn't mean that it's all good in there.
Still need a break. Still need to let things cool down a little bit.
And then not have to wake up to an alarm in the morning. So
get a little sleep. It's getting darker in the morning here, so that feels pretty good.
Yep, for sure.
So let's end on what did you grab to eat when you finished that? What was the go-to? Were you ready for food, or were you just?
I was ready. Sometimes I'm not ready, but I was very ready. We were in Beaufort, South Carolina, and I think it was called Blackstone's Cafe maybe. And I got this brunch bowl that was like potatoes and peppers and onions and eggs and cheese and bacon. And because I'm like a 5-year-old and don't drink coffee, I was like, do y'all have hot chocolate? And they were like, yes. And I was like, she said, do you want whipped cream? And I said, oh yeah. So she brought out like this, it was like a bowl of hot chocolate with like 2 inches of whipped cream on the top. And I was like, yes.
Like, yes, this lady read the situation right.
Oh yeah. This is great. Then I went home and fell asleep on the couch for 2 hours, I guess, while my husband made the lunch that I asked for, but I fell asleep. And then when I woke up, he's like, do you want lunch? And I'm like, I kind of just want a bowl of ice cream. So I had ice cream for lunch and it was great. Did
it make it to the bowl or did you just go straight tub? I'm picturing straight tub.
It did go to the bowl. It did, but I was like, I should have just went straight tub. Because I think I finished it off anyways.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, it was fun.
Well, like I said, I think we could go for longer, but in the essence of time, I will let you get back to your day. But, you know, head on over. Like I said, she puts a ton of good free content out there. Go connect on Instagram. So.
It was great talking with you today.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thanks for being here with us.
Have a good one.
See ya.
Bye.